Imagine you are standing on the edge of the Sahara Desert. The year is somewhere around 2560 BCE. The air smells of limestone dust and river water. The ground vibrates, not from nature, but from the work of tens of thousands of human hands. Before you, rising out of the earth like something that was always meant to be there, is a structure that will one day be called the greatest wonder of the ancient world. A monument so massive, so precise, so impossibly ambitious that thousands of years from now, people will still be standing in front of it, speechless. Welcome to Wayback Stories. Subscribe so we can continue to tell you stories that take you way back. Today, we are going all the way back to ancient Egypt, to the age of pharaohs, floods, and 40-ton stones, to the story of how a civilization, with no steel, no cranes, no computers, looked out at a desert plateau and decided to build something eternal. This is the complete story of the Pyramids of Giza. And trust me, the truth is more extraordinary than any myth. To understand the pyramids, you have to understand Egypt, and specifically, what Egypt was in the 3rd millennium BCE. Ancient Egypt was a civilization that ran on a single river, the Nile. Every year, without fail, the Nile flooded its banks, depositing rich, black silt across the fields. That silt grew the grain. The grain fed the people. The people, grateful and organized, followed a king they believed was a living god. The pharaoh wasn't just a ruler, he was a cosmic figure, the bridge between the world of the living and the world of the dead, between humans and the gods Ra, Osiris, and Horus. When a pharaoh died, they didn't simply die, they transformed, they ascended. And to do that, to make that journey successfully, they needed a home worthy of a god. Enter the pyramid. But here's something most people don't realize. The Great Pyramid of Giza wasn't the first pyramid, not even close. It was the culmination of nearly 100 years of trial, error, and increasingly daring engineering experiments. It all began around 2650 BCE with a pharaoh named Djoser. Djoser's architect, a legendary figure named Imhotep, had a radical idea. Instead of the traditional flat-top tombs called mastabas, why not stack several mastabas on top of each other, each one smaller than the last? The result was the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, a staircase to the heavens, about 60 meters tall. It was the first monumental stone building in history. It was a beginning, but it was rough, experimental. The world had never seen anything like it, and the world was watching. Then came Sneferu. Sneferu, who ruled from around 2613 to 2589 BCE, was arguably the most ambitious builder in Egyptian history, and the least celebrated. This man built not one, not two, but 3 massive pyramids during his reign. He was essentially running one of history's longest and most expensive engineering research programs. His first attempt at a smooth-sided pyramid at Meidum partially collapsed, or at least appeared to. Then came the bent pyramid at Dashur. You can see it today, this bizarre, fascinating shape where the angle of the walls changes midway up. Egyptologists believe the builders panicked when they realized the slope was too steep and course-corrected mid-build. And then, finally, Sneferu built the Red Pyramid, a true smooth-sided pyramid, the first of its kind in the world. Sneferu had cracked the code. And his son, a man named Khufu, was watching closely. Pharaoh Khufu, also known by his Greek name, Cheops, came to the throne around 2589 BCE. We don't know exactly how old he was. We don't know what his voice sounded like or what made him laugh. In fact, the only confirmed image of the man who ordered the largest stone structure in human history is a tiny ivory figurine, just 7.5 centimeters tall, discovered in 1903. And yet, what he did echoes for 4.5 millennia. Khufu looked at what his father had accomplished and decided to go further than anyone had ever dared. He chose a plateau on the west bank of the Nile, in a place we now call Giza. The west, the side of the setting sun, was the direction of death and transformation in Egyptian cosmology, the perfect place for a tomb that was also a gateway. His pyramid, what we call the Great Pyramid, would stand 146.6 meters tall when complete. That's the height of a 48-story skyscraper. It would contain approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing anywhere from 2.5 tons to 80 tons each. And when it was finally finished, it would be clad in brilliant white Tura limestone, gleaming so bright in the Egyptian sun that ancient peoples nicknamed it the Glorious Light. It would remain the tallest human-made structure on Earth for 3,800 years. Think about that. For nearly 4 millennia, longer than the entire span of time from ancient Rome to right now, no human being built anything taller than what Khufu's workers raised out of the desert in roughly 20 to 26 years. Now, to Khufu's immediate south, his son Khafra built the second Great Pyramid, slightly smaller but sitting on higher ground so it appears to loom just as large. And right in front of it, carved from the living bedrock, the Great Sphinx, believed to bear Khafra's own face, staring eternally eastward toward the rising sun. Then came Menkaure, Khufu's grandson, who built the third and smallest of the Giza pyramids. At roughly 65 meters tall, it's the modest one of the trio. But built with enormous blocks of pink Aswan granite at its base, it was no less extraordinary an achievement. Egyptologists estimate even Menkaure's pyramid required around 10,000 workers, 3 kings, 3 generations, 3 monuments that together transformed a desert plateau into the most iconic skyline in the history of civilization. Now, here is where the story gets really interesting. Because for centuries, people operated under one of history's most persistent myths, that the pyramids were built by slaves. The Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt around 450 BCE, more than 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. And he was told by his Egyptian guides that 100,000 slaves labored for 20 years to build Khufu's pyramid. The image stuck. Hollywood made movies about it. It became the story. It was wrong. We know this now because of one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds of the last century. In 1990, on the Giza Plateau, a tourist's horse tripped over a buried mud brick wall. Archaeologist Zahi Hawass investigated, and what he found beneath that wall was a cemetery, the tombs of the pyramid builders. These were not the burials of slaves. Slaves in ancient Egypt weren't given tombs. They weren't buried with offerings. They weren't honored. But these workers were. Their tombs contained false doors, inscribed hieroglyphs, offerings of bread, beer, and meat. Bones found in the cemetery showed something remarkable: evidence of healed fractures, successful amputations, and other medical interventions. These people had been cared for. They were valued. Then, in 1988, American Egyptologist Mark Lenner began excavating what would become known as the Lost City of the Pyramid Builders, a massive workers' settlement about 400 meters south of the Sphinx. What he uncovered was staggering: long barracks, bakeries, breweries, administrative offices, a livestock corral. An entire city built to house, feed, and organize the pyramid workforce. The diet at this settlement was extraordinary by ancient standards. Workers ate cattle, sheep, goat, fish, bread, and beer, a higher protein diet than most ordinary Egyptians ever saw. The beer wasn't just a drink, it was calories, energy, one of the most calorie-dense foods they could produce at scale. This was not a workforce living in misery. This was a national project, and people, it seems, were proud to be part of it. Modern estimates suggest that at peak construction, somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 workers were involved in building the Great Pyramid at any given time. These were divided into organized teams, called phyles, a Greek word borrowed for the concept. Graffiti found inside the pyramid's relieving chambers, hidden spaces above the king's chamber, names these teams things like Friends of Khufu and Drunkards of Menkaure. They had personalities, nicknames, pride. Many scholars now believe the labor system worked like a rotating national service. Workers, likely farmers during the agricultural off-season, when the Nile was flooding, would serve rotations of weeks or months, then return home, replaced by fresh crews. It was, in some ways, the ancient world's equivalent of a massive public works program. Now let's talk about the raw materials, because the logistics alone are mind-bending. The Great Pyramid contains two primary types of stone. The core, the bulk of the structure, is made of locally quarried limestone. There are ancient quarry sites right there on the Giza Plateau. Workers could quarry stone, drag it a few hundred meters and place it in position. Efficient. But the outer casing, the brilliant white skin that once made the pyramid shine like a star, was made from a finer grade of limestone quarried at Tura, on the opposite bank of the Nile, roughly 13 kilometers away. And the internal chambers, those used granite, Aswan granite, from quarries over 800 kilometers to the south. 800 kilometers, with no trucks, no trains, no roads. And the granite blocks used in the king's chamber weigh up to 80 tons each. How did the ancient Egyptians cut these stones? By hammering grooves into the rock face, inserting wooden wedges, then soaking those wedges with water. As the wood absorbed the moisture, it expanded, slowly, powerfully, cracking the rock along precise lines. It was a technique of extraordinary patience and skill. Copper chisels and diorite pounding stones, a rock harder than granite, were used to shape and smooth the blocks. Copper was sourced from the Sinai Peninsula. Timber for tools and sleds came from Lebanon, cedar from the Lebanese coast. The pyramid wasn't just a building project, it was an international supply chain operation. Here's a question that puzzled archaeologists for decades. The Giza Plateau sits right on the edge of the Western Desert. Today, the Nile is several kilometers away. So how on earth did workers get millions of tons of stone from riverside quarries to a desert plateau? The answer came in two extraordinary discoveries, one ancient, one modern. First, the ancient one. In 2013, a French archaeological team led by Pierre Tallet was excavating a series of caves on Egypt's Red Sea coast at a remote site called Wadi al-Jarf. Inside those caves, sealed away for 4,500 years, they found something no one had ever seen. A series of papyrus scrolls, perfectly preserved in the dry desert air. These were the oldest written papyri ever discovered in Egypt, and they were a diary. The diary of a man named Merer. Merer was a middle-ranking official, an inspector, who lived during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. And day by day, in meticulous hieroglyphic script, he recorded what he and his crew of roughly 200 men were doing. The papyri covers several months of work, loading limestone blocks onto boats at the Tura quarry, sailing up the Nile and through a system of canals and waterways, and delivering those blocks to the pyramid construction site at Giza. Every 4 days, a round trip. 30 blocks per trip, each weighing 2 to 3 tons. About 200 blocks per month from Merer's crew alone. The Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass called Merer's diary the greatest discovery in Egypt in the 21st century. And it's hard to argue. This isn't theory. This isn't interpretation. This is a man who was there, telling us exactly what happened in real time. Merer also mentions reporting to a man he calls the Noble Enkhaf, who was Khufu's own half-brother and the overseer of all the king's works. For the first time, we had a name, a person, attached to the management of the Great Pyramid's construction. He also records the original name of the Great Pyramid, Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. Now, the modern discovery. In 2024, a team of researchers from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, led by geographer Eamon Gonim, published a landmark study. Using satellite imaging and sediment core analysis, they mapped a long-lost branch of the Nile, now buried beneath desert and farmland that once flowed directly past the Giza Plateau. They named it the Ahramat branch. Ahramat meaning pyramids in Arabic. It was approximately 64 kilometers long, and remarkably, many of the ancient causeways leading from the pyramids end right at the proposed riverbanks of this ancient channel. Suddenly, the whole puzzle clicked into place. There was no mystery about how the Egyptians moved stone across kilometers of desert. They didn't. They moved it by water. The river came to them, or more precisely, they built their monument right beside it. All right, we know who built the pyramids, we know where the stone came from, we know how it was transported, but we still have the hardest question of all: how did they lift it? Because the Great Pyramid is not flat. It rises 146 meters into the air. Somehow, workers had to place 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing tens of tons, at progressively greater heights. The upper courses of the pyramid are over 130 meters above the ground, without cranes, without hydraulics, without modern machinery of any kind. This is where Egyptologists still argue, and it's one of the most fascinating ongoing debates in archaeology. The most widely accepted theory is ramps. The idea is that workers built enormous earthen or mud brick ramps alongside the pyramid and used sledges, wooden sleds, pulled by teams of workers to drag the blocks up and into position. Water or wet clay would have been poured in front of the sledge to reduce friction. We even have ancient Egyptian wall paintings showing exactly this technique in use for other building projects. In 2018, archaeologists from the French Institute for Oriental Archaeology and the University of Liverpool discovered a 4,500-year-old ramp system at a site called Hatnub in Egypt's eastern desert, complete with staircases on either side and wooden post holes used to thread ropes and control the ascent of heavy loads on steep slopes. This matched the reign of Khufu precisely. But here's the problem. A single straight ramp running to the top of the Great Pyramid would need to be so enormous, so long and wide, that it would require nearly as much material as the pyramid itself. And we found no evidence of a ramp of that scale. Some researchers propose a spiral ramp, winding around the outside of the pyramid as it rose. Others propose a combination, a straight external ramp for the lower levels, and then an internal ramp system, built inside the pyramid structure to raise blocks in the upper sections. This theory, developed by architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, was modeled using advanced 3D software and suggests the external ramp material was recycled into the pyramid's upper courses, explaining why so little ramp evidence has been found. And then there's the levers. Most Egyptologists agree that ramps alone can't explain everything, particularly the precise placement of multi-ton casing stones. Wooden levers, working in concert with ramps, likely played a critical role in the final positioning of blocks. The honest answer is, we don't know the exact method. We likely never will. What we do know is that whatever system the Egyptians used, it worked. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter side. The four corners are aligned to the cardinal points of the compass with stunning accuracy, without GPS, without laser levels. The precision isn't just impressive, it's almost unsettling. Let's go inside, because the interior of the Great Pyramid is its own wonder. Beneath all that stone, there is a surprisingly small network of passages and chambers. The original entrance is on the north face, about 17 meters above the ground. Inside, a descending passage leads down to an unfinished subterranean chamber, likely an early plan for the burial chamber that was abandoned. Then, there's the ascending passage leading up to the extraordinary Grand Gallery, a soaring corbelled corridor almost 9 meters tall, rising at a steep angle deep into the pyramid's heart. Walk through it today and the scale is overwhelming. You are inside millions of tons of stone, and somehow it feels enormous. At the top of the Grand Gallery lies the King's Chamber, a room built entirely of Aswan granite, walls and floor and ceiling precisely cut and fitted. The sarcophagus of Khufu still sits in the room, empty. Whatever was inside it is long gone, taken by tomb robbers in antiquity. Above the King's Chamber are 5 hollow spaces, relieving chambers, stacked on top of each other to distribute the enormous weight of the pyramid above. These are the chambers where workers' graffiti was found. Their names, their jokes, their proof that they were here. And now, the exciting new chapter. Starting in 2015, a project called Scan Pyramids has been using muon tomography, essentially cosmic ray imaging, to peer inside the pyramid without touching it. And what they found in 2017 stunned the world: a large, previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery. A space about as big as the Grand Gallery itself, roughly 30 meters long, that no modern person has ever entered. In 2023, a further study revealed what appears to be a hidden corridor near the pyramid's north face, possibly a passageway yet to be explored. And in 2025, German and Egyptian researchers using radar technology discovered additional voids beneath and around the smaller Menkaure pyramid. What are these spaces? Stress relief chambers built during construction? Hidden passageways? Secret rooms? We don't know yet. And that right there, is what makes the pyramids endlessly fascinating. Even after 4,500 years, they are still keeping secrets. No story of Giza is complete without the Sphinx. Carved from a single massive outcrop of limestone bedrock, possibly during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2530 BCE, the Great Sphinx is the oldest monumental sculpture in the world. At 73 meters long and 20 meters tall, it crouches at the foot of the Giza Plateau, facing due east toward the rising sun. The face, though damaged and eroded over millennia, is believed by most Egyptologists to bear the likeness of Khafra himself. The Sphinx served as a protective guardian for the royal necropolis, and its gaze toward the horizon may have represented the pharaoh watching the sun, his divine father, Ra, begin each new day. Its missing nose, most likely chiseled off in the 14th century CE. Not, as the popular myth claims, by Napoleon's cannonballs. Napoleon wasn't even born yet when early descriptions of the noseless Sphinx were recorded. For centuries, the Sphinx was buried up to its neck in sand, visible only as a disembodied head rising from the desert floor. It wasn't fully excavated until the 20th century. Just another reminder that the story of these monuments never truly ends. Now we have to talk about the myths, because for every legitimate archaeological discovery made at Giza, there seems to be 10 wild theories trying to override it. Aliens built the pyramids. The Egyptians had advanced technology we've forgotten. The pyramids were built by an unknown civilization that preceded ancient Egypt. Here's the thing. These theories aren't just wrong, they're insulting. They take one of history's greatest achievements, a feat of human ingenuity, organization, and sheer determination, and erase the people who actually did it. We have Merer's diary. We have the workers' cemetery. We have the lost city. We have the quarry ramps. We have the graffiti of the workers' teams written inside the very stones of the pyramid. We have bones showing a workforce that was fed, cared for, and honored. The people who built the pyramids were Egyptians, farmers, skilled craftsmen, administrators, boatmen, bakers, doctors, engineers. And they built something that 4,500 years later, we are still struggling to fully understand. If that's not extraordinary enough without the aliens, I don't know what is. The Giza pyramids are the only surviving structures from the original 7 wonders of the ancient world. Every other wonder, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Colossus of Rhodes, is gone. Destroyed by earthquakes, wars, time, the pyramids, still there, still standing, still the most visited archaeological site on Earth. The Great Pyramid stood as the tallest human-made structure on the planet for 3,800 years, from around 2560 BCE until Lincoln Cathedral in England surpassed it in 1311 CE. 3,800 years. Think about everything that has happened in human history. The rise and fall of Rome, the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, the Age of Exploration, the Industrial Revolution. Every empire, every war, every triumph, every catastrophe, the pyramid outlasted all of it. And it's not just size or age that makes Giza extraordinary. It's what these monuments represent, a civilization's attempt to answer the oldest and most terrifying human question. What happens when we die? The pharaohs built the pyramids because they believed death was a beginning, not an end. They built them because they believed the stars mattered, that the gods were watching, that the direction you faced when you were buried would determine your fate in eternity. They built them because they were human, afraid of oblivion, desperate to leave something permanent in a world that erases almost everything. And 4,500 years later, standing in their shadow, staring up at what they made, you start to understand. They succeeded. The complete story of the Pyramids of Giza is still being written. In every new papyrus fragment, every muon scan, every buried canal, every hieroglyphic joke left behind by a worker who lived 4,500 years ago and wanted somehow to be remembered. They were, and so were the mountains they built. Thank you for watching Wayback Stories. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of curious, historically obsessed person this channel exists for. Drop a comment below with the thing that surprised you most in this story. Share this with someone who still thinks aliens built the pyramids. And subscribe, because we're just getting started. There's so much more back there. I'll see you in the next one.